And we're back here at Build Forward. Welcome to the industry breakout track. And what I think is going to be my favorite session of the entire event. And maybe I'm biased, but the reason I think this is my favorite topic is it's arguably one of the most important topics, not just for us, but for the people we lead. And so I am super excited to be joined today by two experts in the field to talk about mental health in construction. Specifically, we're going to be talking about strong foundations and how we build mental health into the construction conversation. So with me today are Stephanie and Rob, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves so that I don't do them any injustice. But as part of the introduction, why don't you both share one time where you vividly remember being completely and totally happy as a child? Stephanie, how about you first?
All right, well, I will jump in. AJ, thank you so much for having me. My name is Stephanie Lemick. I am the founder and CEO of the Wounded Workforce. We're an organization dedicated to building mentally healthy workplaces and trauma-informed cultures. Before I founded the Wounded Workforce, I spent over 2 decades in-house as an HR executive, and 10 of those years were in-house in the construction industry. I am so honored and so grateful to have an opportunity to help tackle the mental health crisis in construction, and am grateful that my organization also has the first ever construction specific mental health certification called Building Resilience. I am based out of Tucson, Arizona, but I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. And in terms of my childhood memory, the first thing that came to mind actually was when I was a little girl. My dad used to take me shopping one time a year. It was always just a father-daughter shopping, and he got me this really cute costume jewelry ring at Von Mar, Omaha, you know. And it was just such an amazing feeling to have that special attention from my dad, to go shopping, to do those things. So all the girl dads out there, that quality time really does matter.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Rob, what about yourself?
AJ, it's good to be here. Stephanie, great to be with you. For people that might not have heard me speak or see me around the country, my name is Rob McKinney, and I was a safety professional for about 15 years in this amazing industry. Then I transitioned over into technology probably about 10 years ago and started podcasting, speaking. And then the last few years, I've kind of shifted my career a little bit where I've become an advocate for mental health to try and help other guys like me figure some things out. So I currently work for a company called Salus, and I serve as our construction safety advocate. I go around and I talk. I show a little bit about AI. Sometimes I talk about mental health, and try and serve the industry the best I can. Yeah, I'll be honest. When I saw your question, I was like, ooh, positive, happy child memories. Wow. I had to sit with this one for a while, honestly. I mean, a year ago, I would have said I'm embarrassed because it took that long. But now, as much as I've studied what's going on inside my head, I was like, well, positivity. It's not exactly what us humans are wired for. So it took me a minute.
Right.
And I landed on one. My dad used to actually go with two of his buddies, and they would take their sons, and we called it the bachelor's weekend. So it was like this annual guys trip that we did for a long time. And it was hosted over near my dad's place where we lived. I grew up over in Augusta, Georgia. So there's a lake. And so it was this time that the guys spent time being guys. And we would watch, for people that don't know the art form of professional wrestling, we would watch old wrestling live on TV. And these little guys were having wrestling matches, jumping off the couches and doing crazy stuff. Or cooking, grilling. It was this guy time that, one thing that I've kind of noticed, our modern culture and society, we've kind of lost guy time and gal time of just going and being together with your family and friends. But man, I'll tell you, that question challenged me a little bit. I was like, happy, super positive. Woo! I had to go through the teenage years and really dig down deep in that memory. But then a few more popped up. So thanks for the prompt, dude.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for everyone who doesn't know, my name's AJ Waters. I'll be moderating today. I also have a background in construction as an engineer, and then about 10 years ago made the transition into technology. now chief evangelist at Kahua. And it's funny, like my story, interestingly, mirrors both of yours for my childhood memory because it involved my parents and my dad specifically, and a lake, Rob. So we grew up going to the lake every weekend during the summer. Had a little cabin on a lake, and some of my favorite memories are Dad pulling us on the tubes and the skis, and just that like you said, Stephanie, that one-on-one time, right? And being together, even fishing, which I found as a kid to be a little boring. I'm getting better at it now, but that time where you were just you were the focal point that makes that happy memory. And the reason that I started off with that is because it's crazy to think how distant the feelings of happiness can become sometimes, especially in today's society. And as we dive into things like tactics today, maybe first we'll start with the why, because construction has one of the highest suicide rates of any industry. So the question for each of you is, why do you think mental health continues to be such a hidden challenge in construction, despite all of the safety talks that we already focus on? And Rob, I'll ask you that one first, and then Stephanie, you can chime in.
You know, I love this industry. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You know, it's like Micro says, without us, there's no civilization, right? There's no smooth paved roads. There's no indoor plumbing. But we do have a little bit of underbelly, and it's really hard to talk about, especially at the executive level. There is a deep macho element to this industry. You know, men already have a macho streak. Americans have a streak. Then you throw on the construction layer. And I'll be very candid. I'm 53. I'm right part of Generation X. And so we've got a wide independence streak down our back. There's a lot of us that were raised to be tough, to not show weakness, to never be vulnerable, to show your emotions to others. And here's what's really hard. The last couple of years, as I've kind of dove down into this area, most safety professionals are telling me candidly, I didn't sign up for this. I don't know what I'm doing. They've been voluntold. And the safety programs, and let's be honest, since COVID, it was kind of like, hey, mental health's an issue. All you safety pros, that's you. And they're the ones out in the field doing the temperature checks and the wellness checks going, I was signed up to do OSHA 30s. Fall protection. I don't know this stuff. And so part of what we're seeing is the industry is finally coming to terms, long overdue terms, to work on this mental health side of things. But the challenge is we're talking decades of the way men act. And I'm being biased right now because I'm a guy and I'm saying we're really hard-headed. I was super hard-headed for 49 years. And the safety pros are trying to do something about it, but we got decades of things in place, generations of thoughts of how men act. And again, I'm being very specific because men still dominate the industry. Yeah. And so one little talk, 1 or 2 years of some programs, you're trying to work back decades of programming. And I'm guilty as charged. I've been trying to unwind 49 years in my head. So I think that's kind of where we're at of, it's not so much, let's be really open and honest. It's not a hidden thing so much in construction, but let's say hidden in construction in the United States for sure, if we're going to just hone in just for a minute, that we're really trying to work on.
I love that.
Yeah, Stephanie,
I mean, Rob,
what would you add?
well, really well said, Rob. You know, I'll out myself as a nerd right away. And you know, when we look at construction and when we look at the industry, I always kind of describe it as twofold when we think about why mental health is such a challenge. And the first Rob hit on really well in terms of the demographics of construction. Construction is heavily male dominated, and there is stigma, ideas, culture, again, especially in the United States, around how men show up, how men interact with mental health. And that is outside of the construction industry as well. That is a challenge that we're looking at navigating. When we also look at some more of the demographics, we see a really large veteran population in the construction industry, which I love that about the construction industry. I love seeing people transition from military to successfully building careers in construction. Veterans have a higher incidence of mental health challenges, especially PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder. Now, this doesn't mean because someone is a veteran they have PTSD, but again, when we look at the demographics of the industry, we have these high rates because the demographics of larger groups impacted by mental health challenges, impacted by suicide and addiction, we have a larger population in construction. And I think that's an important thing to understand. Our population is already at risk. And then when we look at the specifics of the construction industry experience, I think we get into some nuance around the experience of construction can be especially challenging and stressful. Everyone knows construction work is incredibly stressful. It can be very demanding in terms of hours, time. It can be physically demanding on your body. Think of the last time you were, seriously ill or had an injury and what that did for your mental health. So we have that side of it in construction. The idea that, a job site's always trying to find a way to kill you, that has a mental weight to it as well. And then we add on things that also make it more challenging. Loneliness is a huge issue in construction. That's not something people typically think about, but if you are away from your family and friends for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for a big, important 8-month-long project, that takes a lot out of you. And same for those members of the industry who are traveling, who are doing work away from their families, away from their communities. That sense of loneliness, that lack of, community, it becomes a big issue. And then on top of this, as a former HR professional, this is something I think I've talked about the entire length of my career, and it is the construction talent shortage. It is here, and it is only getting more difficult. Well, that additional challenge only makes the work more difficult, more stressful. And so we have kind of the perfect storm of demographic challenges and then that kind of, situational construction is tough. Construction is hard work, and it's only amplifies why this has become the crisis that we see it is now.
So it's interesting, Stephanie, you identify yourself as a nerd. And I think that has to do with the fact that you dive into the data and some of the very specific details and nuances. But even within that, right, from a leadership standpoint, there are still blind spots. What are some of the biggest blind spots that you see among managers when it comes to recognizing and addressing mental health on their teams?
This is a hard one. This is a hard one to talk about for construction, but I think it's the biggest deal is the culture around drinking in construction is probably construction's biggest blind spot. I think it is, I talked about loneliness. Rob mentioned community and how important that is. A lot of the way community shows up in construction is after work at the bar. And if someone has experienced addiction, if someone is currently experiencing substance abuse and addiction, and the only way to kind of blow off steam, the only way to kind of experience that, sense of camaraderie is with a drink at the bar, is at the after work happy hour, we have a little bit of a challenge. And this is not to say, that construction needs to go dry. I think we need to be much more thoughtful about substance use, which includes alcohol in the industry. I think that is that's the elephant in the room of construction that I think I would bring up, is that this is something that is very much ingrained in culture. And it is something that does not help when someone is experiencing a mental health challenge. On the positive side, though, I think a big blind spot for construction is actually how good construction professionals are at intervening in mental health challenges early on. They just don't recognize that's what they're doing. And what it is, are you talking to someone? Are you checking in? Do you care about the people you work with? I've met enough superintendents in my life to know they know everybody's business. Okay. Biggest gossips I've ever met. I love that though. But you know the people you work with and you care about that. You care about them. That is a mental health intervention. And the construction industry is already really good at that. We're already really good at the beginning. It's just those next follow up steps to follow through and get people connected to the support and the resources that they need.
That's an excellent point. And, you know, those are some of the blind spots maybe from the leadership perspective. Rob, you work directly with the craft and safety leaders a lot. What are you hearing from individuals that are on the front lines that really drives their stress and mental fatigue? What are they doing and looking for?
Stephanie hit a spot on, and I'll go ahead and self-identify. I used to come home every night as a safety director and just pour one finger, two fingers, sometimes three fingers, if you know what I'm getting at, of bourbon a night. I was the safety guy. I knew where my trucks were for the company. I knew what bars they were at with that logo out front. I can remember times when they still had beer kegs at the top out party. I mean, I'm dating myself, but what Stephanie's talking about, it's clear and present there still. Now, here's what I hear from professionals on a weekly basis. There's not enough time to get it all done. These people are taking calls and texts and emails up till 8, 9 o'clock at night. When I'm coaching people and I ask them, what does your wind down look like? And they say, I close my eyes. There's no wind down. They're taking calls that late because they're afraid if they don't and they don't get the job going and they don't respond. And I mean, our 24/7 connectivity is really grinding on them. And let's be honest, you know, we have, again, if I'm looking through a filter of a couple generations in America, we were taught to rise and grind, to get stuff done. We're proud and we brag, and it's almost like we're a martyr. I used to work 80, 90-hour weeks and look at somebody else like, you only did 60? What's wrong with you? Why don't you come in on Saturdays? What do you mean you don't do swing shift? I was part of that culture, right? We've been brainwashed. And sometimes now you hear this whole work-life balance. Welcome to construction. It's on when the job starts till it ends. Now, I was weird because I started off originally, I was attached to some projects, but then I became a corporate director. There's no downtime for corporate directors because there's always jobs going. And what I didn't understand is it's life. And you have to understand how to compartmentalize and also this magical power of a word, no. Because we work, I don't know if anyone's ever heard this term, and it was explained to me by Chad Pearson from Plexus back in 2017. We work in a VUCA environment, VUCA. And it stands for volatile, uncertain, changing, and ambiguous. And that fits construction to a T down to the minute. Mm-hmm. That's not an easy environment to operate in. If you don't understand where your burnout, your stress is coming from, and I say that because the people that tell me they're so busy, I literally had lunch with the safety director about 6 weeks ago. And the person told me, hey, I tried that box breath you're talking about. I said, great. How'd it work out for you? He said, I felt great. I said, cool. How many of those do you do a day? He goes, oh, no, I only did it once. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, I can't do that every day. I said, it's 16 seconds, dude. I know. I don't have time for that. That's that VUCA environment that's got so many people under control because we are not taught the value and the procedures of rest and recovery. We don't understand how to throttle down. It's making me think through of creating a whole new program I'm going to call the Human Maintenance Manual and start off and saying, hey, let's talk about your equipment in the field. And I'm pretty sure most companies that own yellow iron or big equipment, they've got detailed manuals and specific routines of changing the oil in the tires and everything else. But your original equipment that you were born with, we suck at taking care of our own human bodies and minds because we're not told in this industry. That's what they need is they need to understand what is downtime, what's recovery time. You can't run human beings 80 hours a week, 365 days a year, decade after decade. I can at least show you what it looks like after about 15, and then getting into tech and running hard for 2 decades, it doesn't turn out good.
Right. And the goal is to catch it early, right? But as we've already hit on, people don't want to open up on that sort of thing, right? We keep that kind of stuff inside. So, Stephanie, when you talk with supervisors and project managers, like what are some of the warning signs that they can watch for that might indicate this kind of thing is happening, even if people aren't saying it out loud?
Yeah. Well, the best construction leaders I know are actually already pretty good at this, even if they might not realize it, because they get to know their teams. They know what's going on, they know their people. And that is really a huge difference maker. You know, when someone just seems a little bit off, that is a warning sign. And some of those things can look like someone showing up late, someone missing meetings, maybe someone's attitude. Maybe they used to be the most positive person on the job site and now they're a grump. Or maybe they were, more argumentative, ready to jump in and have a fight with someone at any chance. Those are signs. Those are warning signs of challenges. Another big warning sign is performance. And this is one I really like to talk about. It's because performance, we think of someone's performance declining. That is obviously that's someone we're going to talk to, we're going to check in on. But someone who is performing really, working all hours, performing really high, they also may be experiencing a challenge. And that is just coming through in a different way. So when things seem different, when things seem off, that's absolutely when to check in. They're the physical signs we can think of too. Bloodshot eyes, someone looking really tired, body odor, some of those different things. Someone who's, the sharpest dresser, and suddenly they look really sloppy. Those are some signs as well that can be pretty significant flags as well. So those are the things kind of behavioral and physical that I would recommend watching out for.
So then, Stephanie, on kind of a tactical side of things, is there a healthy way that a leader can check in without crossing that boundary or making it feel awkward?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do is, again, in a way that is genuine to you and make this work for the job site. Don't make this work for Stephanie. Make this work for you. Say, hey, AJ, how are you doing? Is everything okay? I'm always here to talk. Really make sure you're creating an environment where your door is always open and check in and say, hey, what's going on? Let's talk. Or, hey, let's go grab lunch and catch up on how things are going, and take the time to really see and understand how that person is doing. If you're, a corporate employee, maybe you're in an office, those regular one-on-ones that you have scheduled, make sure you're taking time to kind of check in on the person first before you dive into the to-do list. Those things they're the key. And make them work for you. You don't need a perfect script to do a great job checking in on the mental well-being of your team.
Yeah, that's a great point. It doesn't have to be perfect.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
So many times, we just try to say the perfect thing, and it's really just all about connection.
Yep.
Rob, you help folks manage their stress and emotions in high pressure situations. You've been coaching folks. You already mentioned box breathing as one of the examples, so maybe that's the one you'd use here. But what's an exercise that you would teach these folks that they could literally try next week or even tomorrow, the next time they feel stressed out like this?
The tool that's helped me the most over the past 3 years is definitely breath work. And when I bring it up in construction rooms, I always get a lot of giggles and laughs. I'm not doing that. You kidding me? I mean, mainly from guys. And it was funny. I did a podcast earlier this year with an amazing human, safety professional in Canada, Leslie Montgomery. And so she was talking about, hey, I've been hearing you talk about BAMO, and I've been sharing that with some people. And Rob, you got to remember something. And so, Leslie, I love that you gave us this little nugget. I share it in so many stages now. When I press on these construction rooms and explain breath work and why you should do it, and I can see I'm not doing that. Well, Leslie reminded us of this amazing fact. She said, most construction workers have been doing breath work for years, Rob. And I said, okay, I'll buy it. What are you talking about? She goes, every time they hit a vape pen, smoke a cigarette, smoke a cigar. Think about it. When you smoke a cigarette, do people take a little short breath and spit it out, or do they take a So a lot of people know breath work. Here's what we're trying to change, though. We want to change your active ingredient. We want you to just use real natural air. And so, yeah, the BAMO breath is an amazing concept for people to learn. And it's BAMO, and that stands for breathe and move on. So it's a little 4-second breath in through your nose. Now, here's the kicker. What Dr. Seth Ickerson taught me and Chad taught me is when you take that 4 seconds in through your nose, you count in your head 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when you exhale that through your mouth, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you just took 8 seconds. You took, to get nerdy, right? You took a neural break from whatever pissed you off. And this is one of the guys that I've been working with, Mike Esterbrook. When he was looking at this whole program and the study of thought, he said, you know what you guys are actually really teaching construction workers to do when you're trying to train their brains? I said, no, Mike, talk to me. What? He said, you're teaching people how to pause when they're pissed. That's what breath work does. So as I keep sharing this with more superintendents, guys, gals, people in the industry, they're seeing that response. When I teach people and I see their faces in the audience for the first time, they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, that's what this air feels like. Unfiltered air. Imagine that. Try move some more through your body. I think that is one of the biggest ones to teach this industry, because you'll hear the phrase, oh, just take a breath, just calm down. What does take a breath really mean? Well, it means 4 seconds in through your nose and count, 4 seconds out through your mouth and count, take 8 seconds away from the world, and then get back in the game.
So you've already hit on this, Rob, that somebody gave you the argument, I don't have time for that. I don't have 8 seconds. But we all know that mental fitness training is just like physical fitness training, right? Without doing it routinely, you lose it all. So what does that look like in reality to someone who's working 10, 12-hour shifts in the field? What does a mental fitness regimen look like?
The way I have been taught in the program that I'm following from My Steady Mind is you learn to create your formula. And it's 2 simple things. Every morning you have a routine to get started. And then more importantly, in the morning or afternoon, you have resets. And you program them in. I literally on my phone every day at 10, 2, and 5, my phone alarm says BAMO. And like Pavlov's dog, I take a breath. Or I start working with construction pros and say, all right, BAMO is your seatbelt for life. When you get in the truck, the van, the car, you're on your bike, wherever you're going, before you go anywhere, take a breath. Take a BAMO breath. When you get to the job site, as you're kind of starting to time travel and you're already worried about the schedule and the delays and everything, take a breath. Before every meeting, before any major thing in your day, take a BAMO breath. More importantly, when you get home finally, whatever time that is, when you get home or to the hotel or back to the trailer, before you get out of the truck, take a BAMO breath. It's learning to take microseconds in the day, or if you have to take it up a notch, here's a mental Jedi trick. When you feel yourself getting mad and you're blowing through your guardrails, see a stop sign in your head. Literally tell yourself, stop it. You're the only one that can feel and know what's going on inside your brain. You have to tell yourself, stop it. And then take another breath, If that doesn't kind of help course correct, I don't know what will. But in that 10-hour day, I was so guilty of back in the day of just pushing through. And I did get that afternoon fog around 1 or 2 o'clock and go crank, back in the day, drink 4 or 5 Starbucks in the afternoon. And then I'm jacked up on caffeine and I can't go to sleep. And then here comes all these new energy drinks. And we're hearing about people drinking 4 or 5 Monsters in a day. And they're thinking, oh, I just need more energy. I'm like, no. What you need is time to recharge. And so it's learning to do micro breaks that while you're sitting in line, nobody knows you're doing breath work. You're eating your food at lunch. No one knows that you're telling yourself, stop it. Stop it. It's learning those micro habits.
And I love what Rob is saying about breath work, because it's neuroscience. It's neuroscience. When you're reacting, it's your brain doesn't know the difference between a bear and a bad meeting. Like, it is your caveman brain responding and reacting. And breath is a great way to tap into your parasympathetic nervous system and pause. And it's that stop sign, it's that pause that actually enables you to use your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex. And listen, there are brilliant people who work in construction. You want to take those 8 seconds to engage your thinking mind and get out of that caveman brain, get out of your amygdala. And it makes a huge difference. And I love what you said about recharge, because a question I ask everyone when we're talking about mental health, if I'm coaching them, it's like, how do you recharge? Because it's different for everyone. Some people it's working out, some people it's going for a drive, some people it's fishing. The best example of mindfulness I've ever heard. And it's find time, like you said, whether it's small little micro moments throughout the day, or is it a moment once a week, to do those things that help you be the best version of yourself. And they're different for all of us, and that's okay. It's just finding what that is so you can make time to do it and incorporate it into your life, whether you're busy or have a little bit more time.
Stephanie, you hit on earlier that construction is really good at knowing their people. But one of the keys to connecting best with your people is vulnerability. And sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable as a leader if you're trying to keep your credibility. How can leaders balance that in making that true connection and being vulnerable without totally losing their credibility?
I love that. It's such a good question. It's such a hard question. I think that's the hardest thing, is we say be vulnerable. And a lot of times people are like, I don't even begin to know how to do that. This is not something that was modeled to me. We know that this industry is not great at modeling it. And we also know we can be a little judgmental. We want to know that we can trust the people to understand. And my number one recommendation is, when you are looking to be vulnerable as a leader, do it in a way that feels genuine to you. If that sounds like being open about a mental health challenge you experience, oh my goodness, yes, please do that. If you're like, I would rather shave off my own eyebrows than ever do that, don't do that. Do not feel pressured to tell your story. That's not what this work is about. And so if you're looking for a way to start to be more vulnerable as a leader, my number one thing is insert I don't know into your vocabulary and say, I don't know, but we can find out. And here's the process. And I think this does two things. None of us know everything, and it's okay to know that. And you verbalizing that as a leader, it shifts the culture subtly but meaningfully into it's okay to not know. It's okay to ask for help. But in terms of credibility, it also builds your credibility in showing I don't need to know everything. I can leverage other resources, other information to get to the right answer. So we know as a leader, it's not about your ego. It's about you getting the right information. And also it's a great way to model vulnerability in a way that can feel safer or more genuine.
So then, you mentioned the Wounded Workforce's certification training.
Yeah.
If you could change one way that construction is training their leaders in this aspect, is there one thing that would make a big impact on building mentally healthy cultures in construction?
Yes. How we use the word mental health. It is my number one thing. And this is across the culture. Literally, I'm ready to call up Jose Diaz-Balart every time I see him on the news. And we use mental health synonymously with a mental health challenge or a mental illness. Mental health is so often used in a negative connotation when we all have mental health, like full stop, period. We all have physical health. We all have mental health. And one of the things I always start my certification programs, any talks with, is the concept of the mental health continuum. And it is the idea of, there are diagnosable mental illnesses, and you can have a diagnosed mental illness or no diagnosed mental illness. And that's one line of this continuum. And then the other axis is high mental well-being or low mental well-being. And so that means someone could have nothing that would be clinically diagnosed. There's no illness there. And they could have low mental well-being. That person needs support. That person needs resources. We all have that experience we have at some point in time. And on the flip side, someone could have a diagnosed mental health condition. I have diagnosed mental health conditions. I'm diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I have high mental well being right now. I am able to do my work. I'm able to have great relationships. I feel good. I'm a functional member of society. And I love the mental health continuum because it helps people understand this is constantly moving for all of us. And whether you have a diagnosis or not, your well being is going to be different. And we all have that kind of individual understanding of our own mental health. And I think if we just could change, not only in construction, but as a society, how we talk about mental health instead of just using it synonymously with mental health challenges, it would be a game changer. But pay attention the next time you're watching the news and they bring up someone having a mental illness or a mental health challenge, they're going to say it mental health. They're not going to say challenge or illness. They're going to say mental health. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll get you on my one woman mission to change how we talk about this.
Well, it's really interesting because, like, Rob, you're famous for saying that culture will eat safety for breakfast. So if we're talking about culturally making this big shift, what are small things? Like, what are daily habits foremen could implement to normalize conversations about stress and mental health?
They can use BAMO. Literally learn how to use it themselves. And as they walk around and when they can see that person with the eyeballs going back and forth, the bloodshot eyes, when they see and feel, more importantly, something's not right, it's just looking at them, that other human, and saying, BAMO. Or maybe starting off each pre-work shift when they come back from a break, when they do something dangerous. That's how you start normalizing, is they create that tribal language that you can talk about some hairy stuff in public and it's okay. So you're using breath work first for yourself to stay calm as that leader, but then also when you see that crew member that's not right and you want to address it, in a humanitarian way and a decent way, it's using that simple 4 letters opens up so much of this. Just nonverbal communication, especially like I've been teaching this to my 13-year-old daughter for 2 years. When we're in weird family stuff, I can tell she's getting spun up. I just look at her and tap my nose, and she knows that means BAMO. Use something small and change the way you're communicating.
I love that you have even a little tell for it. That's really cool. Okay, so quick time check. We're starting to run a little tight on time, so this will be the last question, and I'm going to ask it of each of you. Rob, you'll get to go first. So Stephanie, you get to think for a little bit. But if every attendee here today took just one action when they got back to their project or their office after this session, what would you want it to be? And I can probably guess Rob's, but I'll let him share. He may have a second action.
If we're talking about going back and actually trying to think about this mental health versus mental illness versus stress, this whole VUCA environment we've been talking about, step one, it's acknowledging it internally. There's still a lot of people, I will say this, with their head in the sand. There's a lot of la, 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 la. Rob, we don't want to hear that. Rob, we don't want to hear that. Shut up. Let's get back to work. Step one is you got to acknowledge it. And the next part of that, part of the training that I've been working on for the last 2 years, acknowledge that something's going on. And then you might have heard this phrase, name it to tame it. When you feel pissed off, say, hi, anger. What's up? When you feel anxious, when you feel scared, when you feel insecure, for a long time, I didn't understand how those emotions are pushing that control board. So we have to acknowledge it. But then in our own head, you got to name it to tame it and literally just confront it. And hard part, your bonus work, sitting with negative emotions, humans are not good at it. We suck at it. We want comfort. We don't want to feel anger or sadness or discomfort. And that's where that training has to come in, when the company will give you these tools and kind of put it in place. And Stephanie, I think you're talking about it. When we go into caveman mode, we're not thinking clear, we're not safe, we're not making good decisions, and it's a slippery slope real quick. So acknowledge it, name it to tame it, and then hopefully the companies that are listening to this will start really looking at true wellness programs. And what I'm hitting at is more than a piece of paper on the wall that says EAP.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. I love that. Acknowledge, like, isn't that always step one in every plan is step one, admit you have a problem. Stephanie, what about for you?
I would say, I love what Rob said. So absolutely, but like do that for sure. I would also say, just from like a personal standpoint, think of someone you haven't talked to in a long time. Who haven't you not checked in with in a while on your job site, and go have a conversation with them. You don't have to go and be like, how is your mental health? No one talks like that. That's not what we're looking for. We want to say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Make that deliberate. And, some of the best advice I ever got from a manager was you're good at connecting with people, but be deliberate about it, Stephanie. Pay attention to who you're checking on, how often you're checking in on them. Be deliberate. Like, make a date. Like, have an Excel spreadsheet and write down the last time you talked to someone. If you haven't talked to someone in a while, go see them. So it's not intentional. When we overlook someone, it's not intentional. It is all of the VUCA things Rob mentioned on a job site coming at us. But when we're deliberate about that practice we're so good at of checking in on our people, we can make sure we're not missing out on some of those warning signs that we talked about earlier.
Yep, absolutely. Stephanie, if folks want to follow up after this session here, how can they reach you?
Oh, you can reach me so many different ways. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm quite busy on LinkedIn, as I tell the kids, be an influencer on the least trendy social media platform. That's always the best. I also have my website, thewoundedworkforce.com, and you can also email me at stephanie@stephanielemick.com. I always love connecting with people who are passionate about this work or have connections. So please make sure to reach out.
And Rob, how do people find you?
Same thing, that amazing, useful or useless platform, LinkedIn. I'm usually there a few times a week telling you about AI or tips for your brain. I'm on a lot of social media. My handle is @ConAppGuru. If you want to reach out, please, love to share any knowledge, wisdom, anything that I can.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for your time today. This has been incredible. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully you all attending at home or at work learned a lot. And as you move on throughout the sessions today at Build Forward, you can stick with us in the industry track. Risk for the Rest of Us will be next. Or you can jump over to the technology track where we head into an understanding of asset data. So we look forward to seeing you through the rest of the day. Thank you all.